joining today's exit interview with Sparks head coach Derek Fisher. To ask a question, you'll just click chat and then the raise hand function. Same process as we did all season. Excited to recap the Sparks 2020 season. We'll get started with Doug Feinberg with the AP.
Hey, Coach, good to see you.
Thanks, Doug. I
got a basketball and a non-basketball question. The non-basketball one was, what's the first thing you did when you actually got out of the bubble and got home? Like, what was the first, besides seeing family and friends, like, what's the first meal you had that wasn't a bubble special? Question is, you've had some time to reflect. What do you guys need to work on most to get to the title chance next year?
Yeah, no, the non-basketball question, definitely the first thing was, just like the longest hugs ever for, my fiance and the kids, and, just trying to get to them as quickly as possible, after we wrapped up. And, there were special moments, and, it wasn't an easy experience, but I think one that, we all learned from as a family, and I think our Sparks family as well, learning from the experience. And in terms of the meal, honestly, it was, I had not cooked, I hadn't driven a car, like I hadn't done some of the most basic things, in a few months almost. So just, getting back and being able to get in the kitchen myself, and, my kids requested spaghetti that I like to cook and that I've, found a pretty good recipe for. And that's what we went with the first time we were able to have a family meal. So from a basketball perspective, I think that, it's an interesting question, because we, in the 2 seasons that I've been here, it's hard to compare the 2 seasons, because of what 2020 presented. And I think that, looking back just on this season, the inability to practice, and the way you had to manage your way through the season, I thought that we, accomplished some really good things. But of course, at the professional level, if you don't win or win at all, quote unquote, you have things to get better at. And so for us, I think, we'll continue to evaluate from a roster construction standpoint. I think also just from an organization standpoint, how we want to do things on a daily basis, our culture, our staff, the things that we prioritize, from sports medicine, strength and conditioning, the type of young ladies and women that we want to have. I think we were really proud of our group from that standpoint, because we knew coming into this season that it would be about more than basketball. And, when you think about the positive burden that our particular group carried, with NECA's responsibilities as president of the PA, Candace's visibility as a voice and leader for a lot of women in sports and in business, and the career she has in broadcast, the things Chelsea was doing with her organization, in terms of getting out the vote, and the assist initiative that she had going on. Like, there was so much more that our players were carrying than basketball. And so I just think overall they deserve a lot of credit for what we were still able to do and get done. But again, just to bring it back to what you asked from a basketball perspective, we want to and will get better. And a lot of that will start with, what type of team do you need in order to compete for championships in the WNBA right now? When you look at Seattle and Vegas in the finals now, and you look at Washington, being whole again next season, and some of, a couple of the other teams that will be adding significant talent back to their roster, how do we compete with that? And those are the things that we'll have to discuss in the coming days and weeks.
John W. Davis, Winsider.
Hey, Coach, how's it going?
Everything is good, John. Can't complain, man. It's 2020 seems to continue to give us, something new to talk about every day, that we have to, kind of manage as a country and as a society. But I can't complain, man. Kids are healthy and I'm healthy. Family's good. So things are good.
Most definitely. Yeah, it's a lot going on. If I could ask you something to kind of follow up on what Doug was talking about, and you mentioned roster construction, and this is a discussion that I've kind of had internally with myself and then externally with other people. Do you think that the Sparks could be successful in 2020 if you had a roster with only 4 post players instead of 5 post players? And that's something that could possibly give you just a little bit more depth, maybe at guard or at wing?
Looking back, or you mean looking forward to
looking forward? Yeah. Do you think you could, because the last 2 seasons you've had 5 post players, but you haven't played all 5 post players consistently. So I'm saying, looking forward in 2021, do you think that you could construct a roster where you had a core 4 post players and you said, this is who I'm going with, and then you use that extra depth in a different way?
Yeah, I think it depends on the personnel and the player. I think Candace's versatility always gives us room from that regard, right? To have what you would consider to be 4 bigs, and then Candace's ability to literally play probably 4 positions, if not 5, depending on how she's shooting the ball, on a given night. So, we feel like we have that versatility for the most part, even if we technically are carrying 5 big players. But it's a fair question, again, especially when you look at the way the teams that have been successful in recent years in the W are constructed. I think they carry 5 bigs. When you look at Washington last season winning the title, with Deladon, Tiana Hawkins, Hines Allen, who didn't play a lot, who's obviously a really good player, Emma Mieseman, and LaToya Sanders. So those are 5 big players, even though they don't play that 5th one. But it was their versatility at the wing with Atkins and Powers and Cloud, and that type of style. Walker Kimbrough will come off and get a few minutes. When you look at this Seattle team that won the title in 2018 and that are back in the finals now, with Mercedes Russell and Howard and Breanna Stewart, and then Crystal Langhorne. They have Mag Bagor, Morgan Tuck, who's been out with injury a little bit. So technically 5, but Breanna Stewart and Natasha Howard are forwards that are really versatile. Howard can play the center. You could play Stewart at the center. So I think going forward for us to bring it back specifically to us, like I think we can go in the direction that, we choose, which is a good place to be in some regards. But it literally depends on the player herself. And again, I think Candace gives us the ability to go either way, right? Like where we could go, smaller, quote unquote, in terms of 4 players that are considered to be big, but you still need that length and the size, when you think about the size of these players in the W in the front court. Like you can't go out there, with 6 feet, tall, forwards and centers. Like you won't be able to rebound. You won't be able to physically play the game the way you need to play it. So even if she isn't, quote unquote, a center, right, as a big, like you're saying, we still will need like the length, the wingspan to rebound outside of her area, to get deflections, to be comfortable finishing the ball around the basket in traffic and through contact. You do need some size and length from that regard. But it'll depend on who the players are.
Go to Miriam Swanson, LA Daily News.
Hey there, Fish. Thanks for talking to us and hanging there and here in 2020. Yeah, so I guess you've talked to us a lot, and I guess you talked to the team too a lot about sort of your championship experiences and how important relationships are and how much of a process it all is. I guess watching the run that the Lakers are on now, does that sort of reinforce that or kind of remind you of all those memories and thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think what comes to mind when posed that type of question is like typically we only remember, and when I say we, like collectively, right? Society, media, folks outside of the locker room, or like, if the players that haven't been through the failures and the down periods of time before the championship success. And so when you see a team, or you are the team that is right on the precipice of breaking through to like your championship moment, the reason why grown men and grown women cry hysterically in those moments is because literally every failure, injury, mistake, shortcoming, when you didn't get it done, the way people questioned you, talked about you, hated on you, like it all just comes rushing out. And people tend to like forget, they have sometimes on like social media, when you look up stuff related to success, right? And it'll have a picture of an iceberg, and it shows how like, we all see the part of the iceberg that is above the ocean water, but we don't see that the biggest part of the iceberg is the part that's underwater, right? So the hard work, the failure, the struggles, the times you didn't make it happen. So when I see a team like, whether it's what the Lakers appear to be on the edge of and around the corner from being able to win a championship, or when we get to that point, it's the times when it didn't happen. Like for us, the first time that we won the championship in 2000, that was 4 years of frustration and, playoff losses and getting swept out of the playoffs by the Utah Jazz and having to learn what it actually takes to win as a group. Not because there weren't guys that weren't capable of winning individually, but how do we do this together as a group? And I think those are the lessons that you learn when, you're eliminated from the playoffs and you have to watch other people go on. Hopefully it sharpens you and hardens you in terms of your determination to come back and be better. And that's really what it's all about. And the greatest players and the greatest teams, like they all figured that out. That, you can go back in the history of the greatest players and the greatest coaches, and very few of them, in their first year together or their first year get, working on something, it just all comes together. And if it does, at some point there's some down years coming, and then they have to figure out how to rebuild it again. So, we're in the midst of our building process, even though we get compared to, the tradition of success within the Sparks, but we just have to be willing to continue to do the work.
Over to Howard Megdal with Next Hoops.
Thanks, Eli. And Derek, appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Of course. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
It's sort of a two-part thing. The first part is just looking at what you guys have done particularly well over these 2 years and where there's been some struggles. You've been a top 3 defensive team both years in the regular season, and your defense is held throughout the playoffs. The offense hasn't performed quite at that level, and then there's been a real offensive dip in the playoffs in both of these years. And I'm wondering what you're seeing as to why, and then also as you've taken some time to think about what you have, and you talked about the way this team needs to look, does this team need large structural changes to address that, or is that something where at the margins you think they can make those changes? And I just had a follow-up after that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think the first part of the question, or the first question, I think that we, in particular this season, were able to accomplish some wonderful things offensively as well. I think in terms of our offensive rating, maybe we were 5 or 6, but in terms of historically for our team, our points per game, being in the top 5 in terms of scoring 85, 86 points per game, leading the league in 3-point field goal percentage, being second in the league, I think, in overall field goal percentage, franchise records for a number of different offensive categories. Like we're moving in the direction that I would like for us to move in terms of being a team that is really versatile offensively, where all 5 players are capable of passing, shooting, dribbling, making good decisions with the basketball. And I think because that is new, right? And because I've asked our players to do things differently than what they had historically done them, I think that when we get into the postseason, when the pressure is at its highest, the expectation levels are at its highest. I saw something the other day that said when things are at their most uncertain, we're going to go to the things that are most certain to us. And so I think that what typically happens for us is and as human beings, like we're going to revert to what our habits have been, because it's hard to trust a new thing. And that's what we have to continue. And that just takes time, right? We, from 2019, the way our roster was constructed, to 2020, it's a completely different team. Although at the top of it, right, like people just like to look at our roster and say Chelsea Gray, Nneka, Candace, whoever else they like to add into whether it's big 3 or sometimes they feel like they say we got a big 6 because they start throwing Simone and Shanae and Christy and everybody's a Hall of Fame player, so we're just supposed to win. But people just sometimes tend to forget, and maybe us included, how difficult it is when you're talking about 5 or 6 new players, personnel, personalities, egos, etc. So, I think in particular in a single elimination format and the way the pressure really intensifies in the W, you have to have a level of trust and faith in what you have built, so that when things do get hard and you're going to rely on your habits, players are still not having to choose between old habits and new habits. It's like, no, I've built the new habit, I'm going to go with that one. And this year, I think with there being no practice, it was hard to continue to develop the new habits that I asked of them and our staff was asking of them on the offensive end. The second question in terms of roster construction, how our team can be built. No, I think I'm always of the belief that there's enough, right? That you have enough, like we have enough to get it done. If our team is the same, historically in sports, you don't really always come back with the same team you had the year before. It's just a difficult thing to do. There's usually going to be some level of change. How much change, that's for ownership and management and as a group for us to figure out, and the players and the agents themselves, making decisions that they feel like are best for them in their careers, at this time. But I don't think we necessarily have to, like make these wholesale large, roster changes just to have a chance to compete and win, because a lot of the things that really I think are like keys to winning are not necessarily just talent related or roster construction related. A lot of it is the mental capabilities and willingness, the self-discipline that regardless of who the player is she willing and capable of having the discipline level, the commitment level, the attention to detail that it takes to win at the highest levels. Any team would choose to maybe want to be faster, longer, be able to shoot better, be able to jump higher, whatever, those things are. But the truly great teams, they put together a collection of individuals that really find a way to enhance each other's strengths and weaknesses. And they think the game in a way from a basketball IQ standpoint, from a chemistry standpoint, from a togetherness standpoint, that's what makes them special. And that's what we have to continue to focus on and build and reach for. Is not just slapping names on a piece of paper because her name is this, but who is she? How is she made up? And not only that, like, who are we and how are we made up, so that all of those things align, and everyone is like, we have a shared vision and a shared purpose for what we're trying to do. And every day we're talking about that, we're messaging that, we're living that out, the way we practice, the way we interact with each other, like it all fits together. And again, that's not an easy thing to do with so much change happening, right? Change on the roster, change in the front office, change in the season format, change in the purpose of why we even had this season, and then still trying to find ways to be consistent. Those are not easy things to do, but it's
Sure.
to keep finding a way to make the effort.
And that's my other question, just to follow up on that. When we're speaking in terms of continuity, you've now been part of an organization that has Michael Fisher as an interim GM for a little over a calendar year, and I wonder if you've gotten any sort of clarity from the organization about if and when there'll be a permanence, either the interim tag lifted or some other mechanism, because like you said, when you're talking in terms of continuity, having some knowledge of how and in what way the organization will be structured, I would think would help play a part in that. And I wonder if you think that would be a useful thing to you as well.
Yeah, no, I think it ultimately will be useful for everyone. But to be frank, we haven't gotten to that yet. In terms of this season, I think we've, really, which is why this is, I think, great to be able to do today, is to, continue to after, and I know for me, right, I've even tried to allow our players in a lot of ways to just kind of like leave Bradenton, get home safely, kind of go through the process of transition and decompression that comes with leaving a situation like that. I know Brittany Sykes is already in Europe, and we have some players that are kind of figuring out what their next steps are. But before kind of looking ahead too far, just giving everyone an opportunity to kind of catch their breath, and then kind of put the button or the kind of final assessments and evaluation on this season. And then hopefully in the coming days and in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to start to turn the page to like, okay, now that 2020 is wrapped up, players that are going overseas and have made those decisions, players that are going to be, back home or back in market, I'm making sure that players from a health perspective, things that we may or may not need to assist them in, just really making sure 2020 is finished the right way. And then, being able to turn the page and then say, okay, as an organization, how do we see ourselves and how can we best move forward to put ourselves in position, not just to compete for championships on the court, but to really, be an organization, a business that is operating at the highest levels of efficiency, of productivity, of innovation, of collaboration, creativity. And so hopefully, to be honest, how we'll be able to do that over the next couple of weeks and have some of those honest and transparent conversations, even though we haven't, had them to this date. But I'm confident we will. I know that ownership wants to figure a lot of these things out. And so, I'm confident we'll get to that in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. We'll try to get to a few more. I know we got a lot of hands up here. Appreciate everyone's attendance. We'll go over to Tufnini Lynn with the LA Times.
Hey, Coach. Maybe this is looking too far ahead, but you were mentioning roster construction, and I know you're looking forward to getting Christy and Chene back next year. Where does that leave Rashonda and Taya for the future, who obviously you signed to sub in for those guys, but where does that leave them in the future, whether for you or somewhere else in this league? especially for Taya, who competed so well as kind of like the second chance rookie?
Yeah, no, I mean, we have a whole lot of, like spots and spaces to figure out and fill. And it's not necessarily all our choice or we're not completely in control of how these things play out in terms of roster construction either, because of the number of free agents and unrestricted free agents that that we currently have. And so even mentioning Shanae, like we love Shanae, we've loved having her here. We missed her this season, but she's in control of what she does next, regardless of whatever conversation we can have with her about wanting her back. NECA, Candace, Chelsea, Raquana, on down the list of conversations that we're going to have and how to put it all together in a way that can meet the needs and the wants that they'll have as players, and keep those things aligned with the organizational goals, and how to put a roster and a team together that can compete this year, next year, and going forward. So when it comes to specifically Rashonda or Taya, obviously Rashonda has proven herself as a player that is capable of having success in this league. We felt really fortunate to be able to add her to our roster this season under the circumstances. And even though at times she did not get to live out, I think, certain aspirations and visions that she had in terms of being on the court, she played well when she was on the court. And I think most importantly, she proved herself to be a high quality person and woman. And, that in a season like this one, I just don't think that can be overlooked or taken for granted, because it really took special people to navigate the stressors and the things that went into having this season in 2020. And I think Rashonda just deserves a lot of credit for staying positive, keeping in line with her character and who she is and what she's about. So I think she has a future in this league, whether it's with us or anybody. That would, it would be an honor to have somebody like Rashonda on your team. And she didn't do anything to give us any reason why we wouldn't want to have her as we, have those conversations. And then I think for Taya, in a situation where it looks like she may not have even had a chance to play at a W, and then gets a phone call and comes in and really had, so many bright spots and bright moments for herself and for our team. I think she also has proven that she can play in this league, and that she has a bright future. And, how bright that is really her choice, right? How much time and effort will she want to put into being the greatest possible player that she can be. So, again, that's part of the conversation we'll have to have about how to put our team together in a way that can include, whether it's Taya, whether it's Rashonda, the list of free agents that I named earlier, that have been at the top of our roster for the last couple of years, and then obviously longer before my time here, and try and do all of that in a way, again, that keeps the organization in a position where we can compete and be at the highest levels in this league, but also be able to sustain that as we move forward, year in and year out.
Thank you. We'll go over to Brady Klopfer with SB Nation.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm wondering, talking with the players throughout the year, there was a lot of talk about being in the bubble, kind of socializing, fraternizing a little bit, and an opportunity both as teammates and even with their opponents to get to spend more time with their fellow players on their team and in the league. And I'm wondering, for you as a coach, how do you kind of balance that line? Because you're kind of the authority figure, but you're also a member of the team. And in that kind of summer camp setting of sorts where everyone is living together, spending time together, how do you kind of balance that role as coach in spending time off the court with your team versus giving them space? And then just that socialization of the entire team, how do you feel that plays a role moving forward in bringing people together a little bit closer, maybe helping accelerate chemistry?
Yeah, no, great questions, Brady. I think the first one, definitely a balancing act, right? With, being in a leadership position and in a position that comes with, I think, a level of authority and decision-making power, et cetera. And so, yeah, you do need to balance the way you, interact and spend time with, players and staff to some degree. But I do believe there's been an evolution in that regard in terms of, just like in other businesses and industries where, the cubicles and the hierarchy and, only certain people are allowed to take the elevator up to certain floors, and that has changed across almost all business landscapes. And I think in sports, in some ways, it's also changing where, it's okay for the coach, to have a meal, with his or her players. It's okay to, whether it's in a social setting, at the restaurant that's at the hotel at IMG Academy, or, there were times this year where, we had an all team, in terms of food being served and watching games and playing card games and board games and, really a family style type of experience. I think those things are more accepted and more needed by players for sure. And I think it can be beneficial for coaches. I do think that in addition to individual conversations, being around your players in a group setting and really just confirming the fact that we're all human and that even though I'm your coach, like I am a person and vice versa. So I think those things are positives. And so then into the second part of what you mentioned and asked, I think this year we remarked several times, especially as coaches, that there were things that happened that never would have happened if we weren't in this situation. The amount of times that we were together as a team, the players themselves having, time to go spend with each other after practice in the evenings, the way the training room was set up and orchestrated, the players, being there at the same time oftentimes and being able to laugh and talk and share and just really get to know one another outside of just the practice hours. And then typically when you're in market, everybody just kind of goes their own way and does their own thing. And so there are definitely some pros and cons to, the bubble life. But I definitely think some of the pros were the acceleration of time together as a group. And honestly, I think that's what for our team, and I can't speak for others, allowed us in a very, very, very difficult and challenging situation to have still a good feeling about coming to work every day because of how much they enjoyed being around each other. And I think that type of environment is what kind of allowed that to happen this year.
Thank you. A couple more here. We'll go to Chantel Jennings with The Athletic.
Hey, Derek. Thank you so much for your time today. Kind of wanted to go back to an earlier response you had to Doug when you were talking about kind of the positive burden that players took on this season. I'm curious how much you spoke with players throughout the season in terms of taking care of themselves mentally, in addition to physically, but just mentally and emotionally, especially with someone like NECA who had so many responsibilities. And do you feel like that emotional and mental responsibility, that positive burden, played a part in the physical fatigue of this season?
No question. No question about it. That's not, I think a way out of anything or an excuse to any degree. It's just a reality that, when you are in that level of leadership in that position, and you know, the weight that she carried, not just while we were there, but even just getting to that point as a league and with the Players Association, it definitely contributes to not necessarily even acute or traumatic injury, but just, you know, there's only so much energy that you have as a person day to day. And there are only so many things that you can utilize that energy on and still operate at an optimal or elite level. And so the more things that you are managing, the more things you're putting energy into, which lessens the energy that you can put into something else. And as amazing as NECA has been, was this season, and will continue to be, you know, the amount of energy that she had to expend just holding it together for herself, for her teammates, for every other player and team there. I can only imagine how she must have felt on a daily basis, how difficult it was. Also, the burden that she's carrying in 2020 as a Black woman in this country, and how draining that is. It was just a lot. And so I think for NECA and for all of our players, you know, again, it's easy to focus on, you know, what we didn't do. But, you know, we're thankful that we got through this season with everyone in good physical health. They took a lot of pride and responsibility and care in following all of the COVID protocols and guidelines to make sure that we didn't, you know, have any issues in the things that we can control as far as COVID. And just with the messages that they were carrying in regards to social justice and things that were much bigger than basketball. Like I don't know if it could have gone any better from those perspectives. And then of course, you know, the basketball piece went well. Everybody wants to win a championship, but I think there's a lot we can take from this year, and you know, NECA included, and you know, figure out how to be better going forward. And part of that is, you know, now going forward, right? How do we learn how to be the best version of ourselves while we still carry a lot of these things forward, like social justice, racial inequalities, gender inequalities, you know, underserved and underrepresented communities and groups of people. Like that's not going to stop after we finish this interview. So, you know, now that these things are in the forefront of everybody's mind as athletes, you know, learning how to compete still at a high level, if that's the choice that you're making, and still compete and challenge yourself in these other areas, how to put all that together, that's new for a lot of these athletes. And so there's going to be some, you know, kind of growing pains in those areas as well.
Last three here, Amanda Skurlock, LA Sentinel.
Hi, Coach. My question is, how did you manage the team? Like, what learning lessons you get from managing the team, especially through the weeks where you had a game every other day? Like, what lessons can you take from that? How did you what challenges did that bring up? How did you overcome them? And how do you plan on using that moving on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the game every other day, you know, really kind of took me back personally to, you know, more of my NBA experience, you know, with just how to try and manage the workload on non-game days, how to put shoot-arounds together on the day of the game, some of the adjustments that we made from like the first couple of weeks of the season, what time we get to the arena, you know, what type of workouts and pregame kind of shooting and preparation that we're going to go through. You know, we had to adjust some of those things after the first couple of weeks. And then we went on that 9-game winning streak after making some of those adjustments and kind of figuring out, okay, what's going to work best in this setting. And so a lot of it, you know, was kind of adjusting, okay, how long are we going to practice? What are we going to focus on those non-game days? And it really became much more of watching video, talking about things, walking through things on the court, and really trying to allow them, and because of the things that we just talked about, and how many other conversations and things that they would have after practice, that saving really all of their energy for the games only. That is really what it came down to. And I think that's what allowed us to really stay healthy, for most of the season. And the injuries that TRP and Sydney sustained were, physical, acute traumatic injury. We did not have, other than really NECA because of her, burdens and things that she carried. We didn't really have any of the overuse type of injuries that we saw take place around the league this year. And we feel very good about that. I think Courtney deserves a lot of credit from an athletic training and sports medicine standpoint, and Terrence Gaines and the work that they did to help keep our players healthy. And then as coaches, we tried our best to be responsible in that way as well. And that was one of our objectives going into this season, is that we had a responsibility to our women to make sure that they did not come out of this season broken into pieces that wouldn't allow them to not just whatever their plans would be in terms of going overseas, but like us having a chance to, compete next season as well, to not throw everything away with trying to do something for now that is short-sighted and selfish, really, to put players in a position where they're jeopardizing their careers with everything that they were carrying by trying to do too much, on those non-game days. So hopefully that answered the question. We definitely tried to be really smart with those days, and maybe it cost us at the end. There was, I don't know if anybody practiced once the season started. I know we didn't, and it's hard to build certain habits if you're not getting that practice time in.
Last two, Nick Hamilton, Nightfall Media.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good, Nick. How are you?
Good. Now that you've had some time to reflect, obviously being back in the comfort of your home and back in the city, you mentioned earlier about it going through so much as far as having to coach under the circumstances that you had to coach under in the bubble, and then dealing with social justice issues, obviously being in the forefront of conversation about raising awareness about social injustice and voting. But was there any talk about, also in addition to those things, was there any talk amongst the players or you all as far as continuing that plight and continuing the conversations and moving it forward, along with any conversations about reparations as well and trying to move that forward?
Yeah, no, not specifically in relationship to reparations, but for sure, the initiatives, whether it's through our organization and the team, one of our big initiatives and messages this year was that change has no off season. And so it won't stop for us because the season is over. We're still going to have, many of our staff and folks on the business side and in our community relations and PR that we're still going to be championing for things. There's still going to be programs and initiatives like we mentioned earlier with Chelsea's initiative in terms of assist for equality, and the Equality California initiative that, she helped to raise almost $12,000 for that program. And for myself and I'm sure other people that, there are things that we're continuing to do to remind people about registering to vote, getting out to vote. And then I think, I think as we do things, right, we still, and we talk about this a lot, we still have to show room and space for everybody doesn't see all of these issues the exact same way or in a monolithic fashion. So we can champion for things that we really passionately believe in, but then we also have to leave room for individual players that have a belief in these regards. She has to have room to make her own decision on certain things. And so in a lot of ways, as an organization, we try and support what our players are doing, and then we take a larger role in helping amplify those things to make sure we're not stepping over or stepping on things that are really important to them, because we're here to serve, what they need from us, and then also serve the community as well.
Last question. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll go to Sabrina Merchant with SB Nation.
Hey, Derek. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I was just wondering, we talked a little bit earlier this season about how you guys were keeping Fred Williams involved, even though he wasn't in the bubble. And I'm just curious how you felt his absence this season, and then also what sort of role Carrie Korver was able to play on the team this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely missed, Fred's presence. He has a very calming and stable energy about him. And I think that during the course of a season, when everyone's emotional levels are high and low for different reasons at different times, Fred was always able to just kind of help us all keep certain things in perspective. And so we missed having him around, and that doesn't even speak to his basketball pedigree and the understanding of the game and this league that he helps us with as well. But he was able to pass those things along. Like that's not information that we weren't receiving from him throughout the course of the season. It was just more so his physical presence again and his energy, the way our players respect having him around and what he brings to our group. We missed him, but we understand and respect the decision that he made. And again, he was just as involved in putting together plans and scouting reports and practice plans as he would have been if he was physically there. Carrie, the job that she was able to do, kind of coming in on short notice and playing a little bit more of a basketball role than an operations role. She deserves, a gold medal for the effort that she put in. Like that was not easy. She ended up with, I think, much different responsibilities than she signed up for when she accepted the job. I mean, it was prior to even knowing that we were going to be in a bubble and in that single site scenario. So she had no idea what, taking this job would entail. And she was able to help us a lot, not just from an operation standpoint and logistics, but her basketball understanding and knowledge. Even though she didn't have to carry heavy workload in terms of X's and O's and strategy, she still has insight and experience and awareness of the game that was helpful for me, and I know it was helpful for Coach Latricia as well. We were thankful to have her this year. We would not have been able to, have success without her being there either.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. Thank you so much to all the media who joined. Very good turnout, and appreciate everyone's coverage. I don't know, Coach, if you have any final words, but I think that's it.
Yeah, no, I just want to, again, thank everyone for the time and the effort to try and, amplify what these ladies are doing in this league. I know it's not easy, and I know you have to sometimes fight your own battles to get, the things that you're working on prioritized and placed the way you want it to be placed. And so, we really, really appreciate it. We feel like what you were able to do for us and our team this season, it contributed to the overall success for the whole league, because I think there were a lot more people that were aware of what our ladies were doing, how the season was going, who they are beyond just basketball players and athletes. And so, yeah, just really thankful for the way you approach doing things and the way you ask questions, the thought you put into it, the fact that you're fair and objective, but also, if you need to ask a hard question, you'll ask it as well. So I really appreciate it personally. I know our team appreciates it, and wish you all good health and safety over these next few months. And, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.